The Room was released in 2003 and was directed by Tommy Wiseau. It stars Tommy Wiseau, Greg Sestero, and Juliette Danielle, and follows an amiable banker in San Francisco who seemingly has the perfect life, when it then turns upside down when his deceitful fiancé embarks on an affair with his best friend. I've wondered for a while now if this day would ever come where I would review one of the most infamous bad movies of all time, The Room. And with the film celebrating its 20th anniversary this year and being re-released in theaters to commemorate it, I just couldn't pass up the chance to talk about it. The Room has been labeled as one of the worst films ever made, the Citizen Kane of bad movies, and since its release, it has gathered an extensive cult following of people who just love watching the film because of all its quirks. It's truly a bizarre film that will leave you questioning the nature of film and holds a place among other such so bad it's good films such as Troll 2. It's truly a marvel, and now people all over have accepted its badness and enjoy it for that, which is the true sign of a movie that transcends its badness into an extremely entertaining experience that makes it a film I cannot help but love. I remember discovering this film around the time of Doug Walker's Nostalgia Critic review, and around the same time, it seems as if everyone was reviewing this at that time, so it was everywhere. But it wasn't until much later that I ended up watching the film for myself, and I absolutely loved it. And it's quickly become a film I love revisiting all the time. But now, let's do what we always do here and go behind the scenes to see just how this film was made. The Room started out as a play in 2001 after Tommy Wiseau saw The Talented Mr. Ripley. He then adapted the play into a 540-page book, but was unable to get it published. Once Wiseau became frustrated with getting the story told, he decided to turn it into a feature film, producing it himself so he could maintain creative control. So in the end, he ended up writing, directing, and starring in his feature film debut. Wiseau has remained very secretive about how he obtained funding for the picture. According to Greg Sestero's book, The Disaster Artist, Wiseau was already independently wealthy through entrepreneurship and real estate involvement. He ended up spending $6 million on production and marketing of the film. Wiseau has stated the film ended up being fairly expensive because many of the cast and crew had to be replaced. Sestero has stated that the film's budget drastically inflated due to poor decisions during filming, such as building sets and purchasing production equipment instead of renting it. Wiseau also notoriously forgot his lines on set, resulting in multiple takes. The screenplay was originally much longer than the one eventually used, and included a series of lengthy monologues. A lot of the film's lines ended up being cut during editing due to script supervisor Sandy Schecler, who found the dialogue incomprehensible. Principal photography lasted 4 months and took place mainly on the Burns and Sawyer soundstage in LA. Many of the rooftop scenes were filmed with green screen as well. As for the score, it was written by Madeline Misilvic and features 4 R&B slow jams which play during the film's love scenes. The score also has a ton of songs in it as well. The movie was released on June 27, 2003 in LA, and it was unanimously panned by critics for its poor acting, screenplay, dialogue, production, score, and cinematography, and instantly was being called one of the worst films of all time. Finally, the film began growing a cult following at midnight screenings by people who appreciate the film for its weird quirks, who also admit the film isn't very good, and it's because of this the film has reached a much wider audience. Now The Room is celebrated all over by lovers of the film, much in the same way like Troll 2 has become beloved as a so bad it's good film, and can be enjoyed regardless of the film's actual quality. The film has been analyzed since then as a semi-autobiographical picture of the star of the film, and from it, others have attempted to piece together the life of Tommy Wiseau in an attempt to understand him and the decisions made in the film. Eventually, though, Greg Sestero, who starred in the film, wrote a book about the making of the picture, which would be adapted into the film The Disaster Artist, starring James Franco as Tommy Wiseau, who also would direct the film. There's a lot more I could actually say about the film's production, but I feel like that would be better suited for a review of The Disaster Artist sometime in the future, as that book and film go into much more detail about the production side of things. But just note, it was a disaster of a picture, and Wiseau ended up doing a lot of unethical things that led to the film we have now, as it celebrates its 20th anniversary this week. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's talk about my thoughts on the film. This week marks the 20th anniversary of the release of The Room, and I was lucky enough to have it playing in a theater near me as a Fathom event, and it truly was an experience I'm never going to forget. And luckily, I got to share this experience with my girlfriend, who up until this point had never seen The Room, but knows how much people talk about it and how bad it is. One of her best friends even quotes the film. And I was just happy she finally got to see it on the big screen, because I doubt it's an experience she'll never forget. I also realized what a different experience it was seeing it in a theater of about 20 people versus watching it alone at home. When you watch it alone, you're still constantly entertained, but watching it with an audience, it's just way more interesting because you're all sharing this moment together. Whether you're seeing it for the first time or you've seen it before, it instantly made this viewing something to remember, and I had a blast going to see it, and my girlfriend ended up enjoying herself quite a bit as well. The Room truly is a feat that has to be seen to be believed, and I remember the years leading up to my first viewing of the film, watching clips and watching others review the film. But even that can only prepare you so much, because seeing the movie is far different from just seeing those random clips or listening to people talk about it. It's become a bit of a cliche now to say this, but it really is the truth when I say The Room is the best worst movie ever made. Even more so than films like Troll 2, which is another one of my favorite bad movies. It's a film that makes you question what constitutes a bad movie, because everything about the film is just wrong, from the acting, directing, screenplay, cinematography, production design, music, editing. Nothing about this film should work in the traditional sense, but it's that incompetence, that passionate drive from the writer, director, star that makes the film more than just a bad movie. In my eyes, a bad movie is a film with little redeeming value, a film that is offensive, poorly made, and is just not very fun to watch. You really can't say that about The Room, because you can pretty much enjoy every minute of the film from start to finish. It's never a chore to watch. There's always something to talk about. Its problems end up becoming its strengths, and by the end of the movie, all I can say is it's a bad movie, but a different kind of bad movie. One that's, dare I say, good in its own right. Right from the start of the film, everything is wrong, from the dialogue to the way the actors interact with each other. My girlfriend said it best when she was like, they're speaking like people that have never spoken to another human being before. And it's that kind of uncanniness that makes the film work. Every scene is like this, and there really is no way of making this film's dialogue feel natural, because nobody in their right mind would ever talk like this. The lines are repetitive and awkwardly delivered, especially by the film's main star and director, Tommy Wiseau. And when he begins interacting with the others in the film, you get instant comedy gold. I'll admit, there really isn't a single good performance in this movie, but you can't really tell if it's the actors that were hired for the job or the delivery of the lines, because all of it could be plausible. But thankfully, what makes it entertaining is everyone performs their roles with a straight face, which makes for a very entertaining watch. But I also have to admit, the acting does get somewhat better every time the actors are not sharing the screen with Wiseau. The dialogue is still horrendous, but I don't know, it just feels like everyone's a better actor when they're not directly working with Wiseau in a scene. Let's go over some of my favorite characters, though, in the film, such as Denny, this little creepy kid who Johnny has more or less adopted, who seems to really like Lisa, to the point he tells Johnny, Tommy Wiseau's character, that he wants to kiss her. And despite some pretty creepy scenes with him early in the film, I have to admit, I kind of still like the character. Then there's Peter, the psychologist, who's only in 2 or 3 scenes and is seemingly absent for the rest of the film due to a concussion the actor suffered on set. And I have a feeling his first scene in the movie was filmed before he went to the hospital for the concussion, because the dude can barely keep his eyes open. But honestly, my favorite character might be this random nobody that shows up at Johnny's birthday party at the end of the film and confronts Lisa about her affair with Mark, Johnny's best friend. Now we come to the big 3 of the film, Mark, Lisa, and Johnny, from which the whole plot surrounds. Let's talk about Mark first, played by Greg Sestero. Mark is an absolute idiot. He's written to literally be a deer in headlights, who is constantly wondering why Lisa has him come over and is sleeping with him, as if he keeps getting selective amnesia during every scene. This is just a dumb character, and honestly, Sestero plays him beautifully, and I genuinely think his scenes with Wiseau are actually pretty solid. I know there was a lot of tensions on set, and their friendship is a little iffy still, especially if you read Sestero's book, but they feel like friends, or at least people that have some sort of respect for each other. And no, it's not because they keep repeating that he's Johnny's best friend over and over. Next we have Lisa, played by Juliette Danielle, and this is by far the worst character of the film, and good on Juliette Danielle for doing what she can with this character. But this girl is just abysmally written to be just the most unlikable person imaginable. She constantly is unsure what she wants. She uses and abuses people, lies, cheats, and it's just everything that people hate about a person wrapped up into one. And it makes total sense when you realize a lot of the film is supposed to be semi-autobiographical. And with that in mind, her entire character makes a whole lot more sense. It's clear Wiseau had some sort of past relationship that ended badly, and it feels like he put all his anger towards that in this film. So, let's finally move on to Johnny, played by Tommy Wiseau. It's really funny, actually. Johnny is written as a self-insert character for Wiseau, because he ultimately seems to just be playing himself, and it's what makes this character and performance so magical. Johnny is written to be an all-around misunderstood good guy. Everyone loves him and talks about how good he is, which makes the film much more of a tragedy as we see Johnny slowly sink into a depressive state, which ends in him making the final decision to kill himself in the film. The way we get there, though, is so awkwardly conceived and acted that by the end you wonder how in the world did we get here. However, Tommy Wiseau is what makes this movie work for me. His oddball performance is just something out of this world that just glues you to the screen from beginning to end. There's so many scenes I could discuss, so many tiny plot threads that pop up, such as Johnny going to buy Lisa flowers and having an awkward exchange with the flower shop owner, or the famous scene of Johnny yelling about how he didn't hit Lisa, or the scene of Lisa's mother telling her she has breast cancer, or the many scenes of them tossing football. The list goes on, and there's really not much to discuss here, since they've already been talked about so much by plenty of others online. It's just a memorable movie where every scene is memorable. I also want to bring up something I think that makes the Room very special. It's not as simple as Tommy Wiseau made a movie and it ended up being bad. It's also, unfortunately, his love letter to film and the movies that inspired him. There's references to the films of James Dean and Citizen Kane littered throughout the film that actually make it worth analyzing. There's a lot you can pull from the movie, even through all the misguided and horribly written and acted scenes. The Room is just the perfect bad movie. It has so much to offer in 90 minutes, and as you watch it, it ends up feeling like a fever dream. But it is worth watching, not just for all the things it does wrong, but for its influences. Tommy Wiseau wanted to make a good movie, and this shows just how hard making a movie really is, and it won't always turn out the way you hoped. But that's why it's worth looking at. However, I have to admit, as perfect of a bad film the movie is, it does have some exhaustive qualities that make it a film I can't simply watch all the time. Its sex scenes are hilarious at first, but so long and drawn out that it becomes tiring to watch after a while. The same with the 4 to 5 scenes of Lisa talking to her mother. It's pretty much the same scene over and over, and it becomes repetitive. It's these repetitive scenes that make the film kind of exhausting, but it doesn't harm the overall experience because you're still rewarded with one of the strangest experiences you'll ever have watching a feature film. But it means it's just not a film I can watch except for every now and then, but it's worth it every time. The Room is a very special film. Its making of is just as fascinating as the film itself. Everything about it is just wrong, but it's an experience you'll never forget, making it, in my eyes, just the perfect bad movie, and I mean it when I say this, one of the best movies I've ever seen. So, with all of that said, I'm gonna give The Room a 9 out of 10. If it didn't have those moments that drag down the film, it could have been an easy 10 out of 10, which would put it up there as one of my personal favorite films. But I can't say that. But I can say it's a perfect film in its own right. But what do you think of The Room? Have you seen it? And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and stay positive.